Hello, everybody, and thank you so much for spending time with me again today for another episode of Innerviews. Today, I'm very, very excited to be introducing you to Sylvia Walker. Sylvia, please can you tell us a little bit more about your business and what you do for people?
Melanie, I do a number of different things actually. So I'm a bit of a slashy, as they call it. Somebody told me this phrase a couple of years ago, and I said, "What's slashy?" And they said, "No, so this is slash that, is slash that." So I'm a bit of a slashy, but the core focus of what I do is around money and empowering people to make the right decisions and choices around their money. So I come from a corporate background. I mean, I was UCT many moons ago, did a marketing degree. Then went into the corporate space, worked at Old Mutual for many years, and I ended up being a marketing manager there for a number of years. And then I took a package a couple of years ago and ventured out into on my own. The thing was, though, that in all that time working there, I had for a long time focused on women, on empowering women financially. And I kind of extended that after I left. I thought I want to carry on doing this. And that's really what I started doing. I started working with the media, which I'd always done. I really continued with that. I became a financial planner, so I actually work with people, with their investments, with their financial plans, structured around their lives. And then I also, of course, I've written a couple of books. So while I was still working, I actually had written a couple of books for publishing, out in the open market, as well as I've done some books for some corporate clients. In fact, I've just written and I do the full production of the book. So that's why I'm a bit of a slashy. I love writing. I mean, I think it's kind of in my blood to write. And I wrote Smart Woman in 2017, which was a book for women. It's a book about money for women, and lots of interactive examples, and really to take a woman on a journey so that she can have a better relationship with her money and to learn to grow her wealth. And funny enough, Smart Woman I've been writing for about 10 years. It started when I was in the corporate space. And I never kind of finished it, but eventually I got there. And as I say, that was published in 2017. So I do that. I write. I've written another book for a corporate client, which I delivered in January this year. And in fact, I've just signed an agreement with the South African Reserve Bank to write a book on, as part of their 100th anniversary next year, on their IT history for the last 50 years. So I'm very excited about that. It's like a mountain ahead of me, but I'm going to get there. So that's really, so the writing is the
Pretty
one side,
impressive mountain.
Well, yeah, it is. I must say, it was, I went through the whole tender process. I'd never taken part in a government tender. They actually approached me at the end of last year. I was referred to them. And so I said, no, that's fine. And then I got sucked into this tender process. So if anybody's been through that, they will know that in itself is a learning curve. Documents and papers and on their system, their procurement system. Anyway, I just thought to myself, I'm going to do this as best as I can. And if it works, it works. And if it doesn't, it doesn't. And it worked. So, yeah, so it's, as I say, it's been a learning curve for me. So really my business is around money, is around empowering people around money and women in particular. So, yeah, I work with the media. I also do, I do workshops. I do keynotes. Of course, it's been a bit quiet now with COVID, so it's more on the webinar kind of basis. So that's really it, I think, in a nutshell. It's around money, sharing what I know and hoping that it makes a difference to someone else at the end of the day. Yeah.
So for people who are watching, I actually found Sylvia through a couple of podcasts that she did. She kept popping up in various groups that I'm on, and I listened to a couple of her podcasts and I was like, oh my goodness, I really want to talk to this lady more. She knows stuff. Because you've in your podcasts, you've touched on a number of things that have been very true to my own story. And I really think that women, I don't know if it's just in this country, but are not very well empowered to talk about money.
I think it's not unique to South Africa, but of course, when we talk about women, there are specific disadvantages that we have, if I can put it that way. So I must just go one step back. I always say money knows no gender. There's been one or two grumblings that, like, how come a book for women? Like, why special? What's special about women? But I must say those grumblings have come from men. I must just add a caveat, not from women. So, but women have some issues. The one blatant issue is that we know that there's a pay gap. Research again has come out recently showing that men and women earned less than men doing the same kind of jobs. So women often have that against them. They have the issue of the fact that they have to sometimes take time off work to have children and to raise a family. So women don't always work for as many, they don't receive as many paychecks, if I can use that old-fashioned term, as what a man would receive. And obviously you can only be investing for your future when your money's coming in. So if women have fewer paychecks coming in, there's less money that they have available. There's also the other thing that we outlive men on by about 5 years, 5 to 7 years. So that places a lot of strain on us as we get older. We just simply we have more life left in us, and our money's got to stretch further. But I do know that if one looks at the figures and the numbers in terms of what women save for old age, again, they save less, they start later. So, we kind of shoot ourselves in the foot. And then on a softer level, this is not backed up by any firm research, but it's something that I've read and I've tried it when I do workshops. I like to ask women, if you're in a relationship or married, what do you spend your money on, and what does he spend his money on? So I've sometimes received some really bizarre answers. You can imagine, like he spends it on his girlfriend or on his cars or whatever. But cutting through all of that, by and large, many women will say they spend their money on the education, the groceries, the domestic help. Whereas the man will spend his money on the investments, the home, paying for the house, buying the assets, cars and whatever. So what does that mean? That simply means that she's plowing all her money into the day-to-day running of the operation, and he's busy building up assets. So that we do by default as women, often not thinking. And of course, no one thinks you're going to get divorced, but that's a reality for a lot of women. So we often don't create, I said this to someone the other day, we hand away our financial power willingly. We just hand it to someone on a plate. We don't always think that we need to create that financial base for ourselves, that financial stability. So it's a lot of what goes on in our own minds as well, just in terms of those choices that we make in life.
I know that's certainly been true for my life, particularly my earlier relationships. I remember when I was in my 20s having an argument with my boyfriend at the time because he was buying those asset-based things, and I was paying for, I still remember saying to him, I pay for everything that goes down the drain. The food, the toilet paper.
Yeah, it's funny but how we slip into that pattern without actually even thinking about it. We just do.
Why do you think that is? What do you think is the root cause of that?
I think a lot of it could have to do with preconditioning, the way we were raised. So I was raised by a single mother, so I have a slightly different outlook in life. But I think if you were raised in the traditional family where it was a father and a mother, and if I think of my grandparents' generation, often the mothers didn't work, the women didn't work, or if they did work, it was at a lesser income. So it was kind of almost hardwired into your brain that the man is the provider. We still today, it fascinates me. Well, I don't say today because I haven't kind of done the dating circuit, but I know when I last did, when you meet a man, what are the things we always ask? Like, what job do you do? Where do you live? And what car do you drive? Right? Those are kind of the things. Or if your girlfriend has a new man in her life, we check out those material things because that's how we perceive that male partner to be. How good are they a provider in terms of providing material things? So I think that's often where it can come from. It's just the way we were raised and how we were brought up to believe the roles are at the end of the day. I met a woman once, I remember a good few years ago. She was probably then in her 50s, and she said, "Oh, she's very financially independent." And I said, "That's great, it's fantastic." But I mean, I knew that actually her husband was the one with the money. She said, "Yes, I pay for my own hairdressing appointments, I pay my own cell phone contract." And I thought, yeah, that's actually for her, that's just being financially independent. But it actually isn't financially independent at all, because, if that bottom dropped out of her situation, she would have nothing to stand on. She'd have no backup. And that's the thing we need to realize. We need that backup. We need a plan B as women.
And what would your message be to women who feel that they've left it too late?
So we say start tomorrow. Tomorrow is better than next week or next month. We often find too, and I think GBV is a huge issue in South Africa, and it doesn't have to be at its extreme, where women really get hurt seriously, but women are often caught up in situations where they actually are incredibly unhappy, and they're caught up in those situations because of money. I can't afford to leave him, or this has been told to me too. I remember a lady saying this to me very clearly one night, that she hates her husband's guts. Literally, it's a very unhappy marriage, but they live in a very comfortable house, and if she leaves him, she's going to have to go and live in a flat, and she's not prepared to downgrade her lifestyle like that. She did work, but not with a great salary. So I think it's about priorities at the end of the day again, and if you've done nothing about it, it's very sad for me to sell your soul for that roof over your head, because life is for living. Life is not just about having, you know, food and having money and having a roof over your head. It's also about living. So I think, for just coming back to your question about if you haven't done anything about it, start sooner rather than later. If you're in a position or in a situation, start paying yourself first from tomorrow. Make it your priority instead of wallowing in that, you know. And I think, just to touch on that too, it's incredibly difficult times in South Africa at the moment, and one has to look for the opportunities. You have to actually find the positive and make those changes yourself, because it's easy to get sucked in and to wallow in what we haven't got, or what our life should be or should have been. So yeah, start tomorrow. That's actually, sorry, it's a very long answer to a short question, but start tomorrow is better than leaving it, you know, for next month or next year, or until you've got enough money. That's a mistake a lot of people make, men and women. Oh, I'm going to start investing when I have enough money, when I get the increase. You know what I mean? It's only for rich people. And that's absolute nonsense. If you look at the stokvels in South Africa, it's the poorest of the poor communities that actually manage to put money aside every month. And it's a form of saving. So that's a mistake that we also mustn't, or a trap we mustn't fall into, is that when I have enough money, then I'll start saving. You can start with 100 Rand a month. Seriously, you can. And we can all find 100 Rand a month, I reckon, at least. To make it a priority.
I speak to a lot of entrepreneurs who don't take a salary out of their businesses. What would you say to them?
Well, I would question then how they're actually running the business, because are they then, you know, how are they funding their lifestyle? So are they buying, you know, groceries on sort of company credit cards? How are they actually funding their lifestyle? And of course, that's not correct. I mean, you know, according to proper accounting procedures, you should actually, you know, business expenses should be business expenses. So if you're not drawing a salary, how are you funding your lifestyle? That's the question I would ask. And you should be drawing a salary from your business, though. I mean, I don't see how you can be running it, but you need to live and you need to survive. But I do understand, and I'm not an expert on small businesses, but from other people that work in the industry, I understand there are a lot of people that actually are just, I mean, the business just literally scrapes by every month. So that could be part of the reason, but yet people have to survive and have to live. So yeah, how are you actually living is the question. And of course, the other thing is the whole area of reserves. And that's what we saw happen now with COVID and with lockdown. And businesses didn't have reserves. Individuals didn't have reserves. And I think that's a very, very valuable lesson that a lot of us have learned in this process, is to make sure you have those reserves, because if something goes wrong, if your income is compromised, you've got to be able to survive. But there's some very, very sad stories out there, Melanie. I get emails every now and then from people, and it's very, very difficult times for a lot of people.
I've spoken to entrepreneurs recently who've had to cash in their pensions to keep their businesses afloat right now.
A lot of people have done that. I've had some clients from my financial planning practice who have been in exactly that position, literally cashed in everything. One has got a very successful, she's a franchisee, a very successful business, and to cash in everything, you know. So it just knocked people really hard. That shouldn't be your reserve, though. Your retirement funding or your investments shouldn't be your reserve. The reserve fund, or an emergency fund, to use the old term, is really money that's set aside, that's in a bank account that you build up over time. You know, it's not those big investments. You have shorter term. The very short term is the emergency fund, which is where your first priority should be. And then you should be obviously much longer term investing for retirement. And then there might be other savings goals in between that might be a more medium term. But that's not it shouldn't be your emergency fund. But then again, I mean, you know, what happened this year, if it only happened for a month, you know, let's say businesses were affected for a month or 2 months at a push, people might have been able to still stay afloat if they had some kind of emergency. But I think it's emergency fund. But I think it's just gone on for so long that it's decimated a lot of people from a financial perspective, unfortunately.
So if you had a small business and you were faced with cashing in your pension, would you then rather recommend that the business be closed down and you hang on to your pension?
So this is a tough one, because, you know, it's always about balance, about today versus tomorrow. And I actually think if you are facing your business closing and your livelihood ending, you know, to worry about your retirement is a luxury, actually, to be honest. I mean, that's how I would look at it. So I think if people have had to do that, they've had to do that. You know, if the business is salvageable. I think also if the business was battling before COVID, though, that's just a caveat, but if the business was battling or the person was battling financially, there might be some other issues there. We have seen a number of business, big ones, that now they're saying they've closed during COVID, or because of COVID. There was some of the media houses that have closed down. I won't mention names, but some of the big publishers, they were already in financial difficulty for a very long time. So, COVID was just the cherry on the top. So what I'm saying is, if your business was already struggling, you were battling before COVID, it might be time to rethink your strategy or rethink where you put your energy. It's not necessarily COVID, just like I say, was the cherry on the top. But to answer the question, I think, as I say, if you're immediate, if there's no groceries in the cupboard, and your rent is not paid or your bond is not paid, retirement is a luxury to worry about that. Sadly, you have to try and play that catch up again at a later stage.
Thank you. That's a very sensible answer. So how do you recommend people kind of put their savings and their investments and everything together and their pensions together? Say somebody's got 1,000 Rand a month to spend. How would you suggest that they split it up between those short, medium, and long-term investments?
So one normally looks at them sort of quite separately in terms of need. So I know, and this is the practicality, is, one can do the calculations, because there's some wonderful calculators out there. So when we talk retirement, for instance, I will say to a client, at what age do you want to retire? How much money do you want every month? And how long do you think you're going to live? So those are the three kind of variables. So everybody can say how much money they want at retirement. Okay, I want, let's say, 20,000 Rand a month. How long am I going to live, though, is the problem question. We don't know. So we can work till 80 or 85. So anyway, answering those questions, one can do this calculation and say to the client, right, this is the size of the bucket of money you need. You need, let's say, 10 million Rand to be able to afford that lifestyle after retirement. Then you work backwards. To get to the 10 million, you need to be putting so much away every month. So that's the theory, how the theory works with any kind of retirement or financial planning, any kind of goal. Whether it's a goal to go overseas in 10 years' time, same thing. What is the end goal? You work back. But the practicality is, most people will say, I've only got so much money. As you say, I've only got 1,000 Rand. So how do you split that? You need to just look again at the goals that the person has. So if they don't have if they have, emergency fund is number one. So that's the very first thing you should be putting money away to. And to say, even if it's a little bit, 100, 200 Rand a month, let it build up. And then secondly, if they have any other goals, medium term, you need to consider those, but definitely the long term. Everyone's got a retirement goal. They should have a retirement goal. So it would be split. There's no sort of standard answer, but it should be split according to those, the emergency fund, the medium term goal, and the long term goal. I must just say, though, to you that the only people I see that can actually retire comfortably, of my clients that I work with, are those people that have worked for a business for many years and they've actually belonged to a pension fund. That's the most amazing forced saving. As for the rest of them, people that I know on a personal level, even, who've never, who've worked their whole life and they've actually hardly ever contributed, those are the people that are going to have to just keep on working. Retirement is a bit of a fantasy. The thing about, I always say, sitting on the beach sipping pina coladas is not a reality for the majority of people. And then even for those maybe that had been planning, as you say, they've had to maybe cash in now a lot of their investments, their long-term investments, just to stay afloat. So I think, retirement has shifted. It's not what it used to be. It's not this idea of, I'm going to work and then 60 or 65 kick up my heels. And anyway, why would you? I mean, we're active, we're mentally alert. We live healthier lifestyles. So why would one want to just stop, working? So I think, that picture has changed. So for me, I'm a lot more, what's the word? I'm more practical about that with my clients. Yes, make sure you build up a nest egg of money. Make sure you have some money for when you're old. But it's not going to be the be all and end all, and you don't do anything else for the rest of your life. Have that as a backstop, but still be able to generate some kind of money as you go into your 60s or even your 70s. I remember meeting years ago. I did a wonderful function at a hotel in Johannesburg, and I met a lady. Somebody brought her to me to introduce her to me. A fantastically elegant woman. And she was an estate agent, and one of the top estate agents. But I could see she was not a spring chicken. And anyway, they introduced me and I chatted to her and whatever. And I said to her, by the way, how old are you? And she said, I'm 74.
Wow.
I said, but that's, And she was like a really successful estate agent. I can't remember her name, but I said, wow, I really admire her. Full of energy, full of vuma, like, well groomed, like really unbelievable. So there's nothing stopping us if you've got the right mindset Why would you? What would you do there? You know, sit at home and what? Watch TV? I don't know. I'm
Wait to
certainly going to
die.
work as long as, yeah, I'm going to work as long as I can. You know, as long as people will have me, I'll be there. So, and it's all good from a financial point of view. It's as simple as it is.
Yes, yes. Those are some wonderful insights. Thank you. So just going back to what you were saying earlier, that you've noticed of your clients, the only ones that really are sorted are the ones who've worked in businesses for a long time with a pension fund. Why do you think that happens? Do you think the rest of us are just very bad at saving?
You know, it's you know, there's this whole pay yourself first concept. So before you get paid, you know, before you spend, you actually put money into your own savings, your own future. So if you work for a company and they have a pension fund, that is the ultimate pay yourself first, because they actually take the money off your salary before they pay you, if you think about it. Now, I remember when I started working many moons ago for a corporate, that first couple of months, it was like a grudge. It was like a real bad thing. You know, they're actually taking some of my money. I saw it as a negative thing. They're taking some of my salary, you know, into a pension fund. I mean, when you're 22, you don't think about a pension fund. I mean, it's the last thing on your mind. But I think that is the thing. So it's a forced saving. And often in those cases, the company will also contribute. So you contribute and the company contributes to the pension or provident fund. Those people that are not fortunate enough to work in a company, you know, that has that benefit, often they're not given advice. So as I said, when you start out in your 20s, that's when you should be saving. From your very first paycheck, you should be saving. And I use the term paycheck loosely. I know we don't use checks anymore, but you should be from the word go. But most young people in their 20s, it's just not I mean, you would say the word retirement, they run a mile. They don't think about it. People wake up, maybe in their late 30s they wake up, or when they see their own parents retiring and not having enough money. And by then it's often too late. And the other problem, of course, is that we say we can't afford it. You know, I'm earning X amount, I can't afford it. I don't have money to set aside. But again, compared to the person who's working for a company where they automatically take that money off, it's gone before you've even, so you spend what's left, in other words. Whereas if you don't belong to a pension fund, you're going to first spend and try and save what's left, which of course is the wrong way around. So I don't think it's that people are bad. I think it's just people firstly, it's not a priority, and secondly, they just don't get advice. I have a number of clients, youngish clients, young in their 20s, and I mean, whose parents have sent them to me, ironically, and I tell them, and the parents tell them, you got to start from day one. So that's great. They're on the right path, but there are many others who, you know, I see people in their 30s, early 40s who just haven't started, and it's very difficult to play catch up when you start that late. So it's just out of ignorance, I think, often too. Yeah.
I also know for myself, I didn't have much education around savings or anything like that. And then I found that the further I got into my life, the more embarrassed I became to ask.
I think so. Yeah, people are. Yeah.
Because I didn't want anybody to know how far behind I was.
Yes. Money's quite money, even though, I mean, money's completely, it's a complete sort of cold, hard object, but, you know, there's nothing emotive about the actual currency, but yet, when it comes to money, we have huge emotions and huge issues, and it's such a powerful thing. I mean, money can be used to manipulate, it can be used to give pleasure, it can be used to destroy, you know, it can be used in so many very powerful ways. So many forms of energy actually come from money. But yes, being embarrassed and feeling stupid. But the thing is that lots and lots of people are in that position. You know, and where do you go for information? Luckily today with the internet, there's a huge amount available on the internet. You've got to take some of it with a pinch of salt, but there is information out there. But I think often, and I've encountered this, people are just overwhelmed. So they find the whole world of money very daunting. You know, I earn my salary, or my income comes into my bank account, and I know that I have to spend, you know, I have to pay my accounts, I have to pay my bills, whatever. I understand that part of it. But when it comes to investing, people are clueless, and the industry is full of jargon. I mean, the words, geez, I remember when I started in this industry, I think it took me about a year to understand fully what everybody was talking about. You just don't understand. There's all these phrases and words that are used. And for me, money is quite simple. I mean, if you can't explain it and understand it simply, then there's something wrong, you know. So there's no what's the word? There's no joy or no feeling of power to clothe it in fancy words, but it does intimidate people, and people often don't know where to start, as you say, and then you feel stupid because maybe everybody else has got it right. What's wrong with me that I don't actually understand it? But there's nothing wrong, you know. Melanie, when I was at school, I remember the teacher always said, you know, if you don't understand something, put your hand up, you know, and when you stick your hand up and ask the question, 3 or 4 other people in the class have got the same question.
Mm,
So it's really just overcoming that. It's overcoming that sort of fear of I'm going to look stupid.
mm, mm.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for allowing me to put up my hand today. I wish I'd had this conversation 20 or 30 years ago.
And the thing is, once you've put your hand up and you've understood, you're going to be a disciple. You're going to go tell your friends,
Mm,
or tell somebody else, and the message spreads like that. I'm a firm believer in that. So
mm,
it's just about, it's women empowering women at the end of the day,
mm,
passing the baton, sharing the information with others.
mm, mm. Do you think these challenges are just are mostly amongst women, or do you think men have similar challenges?
I think men do, but they just hide it better, I think.
Okay.
That may be controversial. That's a personal perspective. I must say, I've seen some women that are mighty powerful, and the husbands are just like take the back seat. So
Mm,
the gender roles are very much they're how do I put it? They're kind of blurred. They're not as distinct as they perhaps used to be 50 years ago, 60,
mm,
70 years ago. But I think men also often battle with these situations.
mm,
So I'll tell you quite a funny story that I like to share with people around sort of men and money and things. A client of mine, she bought my book Smart Woman a couple of years ago. So she bought the book and she read it, and she phoned me and she said to me, you know what, her husband's very into investments, all the rest of it. He wants to read a book on money, a book on finances and investing. Can I recommend a book for him to read? So I said to her, yes, well, why don't you tell him to read Smart Woman? She said, I know, I told him, but he says no, he doesn't want a book for women. So I said to him, look, just tell him to ignore the cover. Tear the cover off, the rest is fine. So there are no gender roles, but I think often, men are just as clueless sometimes. Maybe just there's a bit of an ego thing, again,
Yes.
because of the upbringing. We have to
Yes.
be the provider. We've got to know what's cooking. So,
Yes.
yeah.
And have you thought of taking your book, repackaging it with the cover Smart Men, and
Yes.
just changing the woman to men wording in the book and selling it like that?
I have thought about it, but do a little bit more than that, because in the book I talk about some of the mistakes women make, and I
Mm,
talk about marriage contracts, for instance, how that can impact on your financial security. I'd need to change it a bit here and there, and I have thought about it, but
mm.
I just haven't got around to it actually. So it is something that's it's on the list, on the to-do list, yeah. But it's very much, as I say, money is universal. It works either way for men or women.
Yes. Yes. And for people who are watching, where can they find your books?
So the Loot or Take a Lot, so they sold there, Take a Lot or Loot, they're
Mm.
online, I think maybe even exclusives. So yeah, they just go there and buy online.
And which
Yeah.
titles are they looking for?
Well, there's Smart Woman, which is,
Mm,
let's say, the book for women and money. And then, and then the other book, my first book I wrote was Dealing in Death, which dealt with Ellen Pakis, that woman who murdered her child. They made a movie about it about 2 years ago. I didn't get the movie rights. Everyone says, oh, did you get the movie rights? No, I didn't.
okay.
But I wrote a book on it about 9-10 years ago. So that one, and we revamped it, updated it 2 years ago. So there's
Okay.
that one, Dealing in Death, and then Steeped in Blood, which was the memoirs of Dr. David Klatzo. That one's out of print, unfortunately. So that one's not available, but may still be available secondhand. So I had a bit of an interest in crime, as you can tell, in true crime
Yes.
initially, which I still do have. But it's just, I'm a great believer in, and this I said to someone at the end of last year, in flow, not force. I've kind of stopped forcing things, and I've let the universe bring me what it needs to bring me. So
Mm.
I'm kind of on this path at the moment, which is, so I've veered away from the crime. So Smart Woman and then Dealing in Death are the two that are available on the public, for public consumption. Just I've done some books for corporate clients, but that's for internal. It's not for the public.
I find it very interesting because most authors focus kind of in one field, and
Yeah.
you've kind of straddled different fields. How does that feel for you
Told
as
you I
an
was a
author?
slashing, didn't I? Listen, I must tell you, I have actually. I mean, I have an interest in crime. There were many books I didn't write, and people don't realize this. They say, oh, you've written a few books and whatever. I mean, I wrote a huge proposal on Tandi Makobela, that that lady who was found guilty of killing her husband, the judge. And that, I did a big proposal on that. I even did a proposal on the arms deal book. So, as opportunities have come up, I've worked with them, but it's really just what interests me, I think, at the end of the day. So Ellen Pucky's interested me also from a woman's point of view, a woman that murders her child, because it goes against everything as women that we believe.
Mm.
Tanyu Makubela was interested in that because a woman that murders her husband. And there have been a couple of like really prime cases or situations like that in South Africa. So it is crime. Yeah, I don't know. It's just to say, whatever opportunities come my way. Non-fiction is the one thing I write. So that's the one common thread that runs through everything. I don't think I'm creative enough to write fiction. It's just, I take my hat off to the authors who write fiction. I like the factual stuff and the non-fiction. I like that. I'm an infophobe, though, I think. I like researching. I like learning. So it's all part of that, being curious and yeah. So I don't know. You never know. I keep threatening to write 50 Shades of the African Sunset, so I might still get to that one.
I love that. I love
You
that.
never know.
And how do you feel about the books that didn't manifest, that you kind of did the research and had the outline and then they didn't happen?
Yeah, there's a couple. I mean, I've just mentioned two. There's probably another one or two that I've done. It's gone full length, because to go to a publisher, you need to do a proposal, which is basically an outline of the whole book. And you can't sort of do a rough outline of a book unless you've done some research. It's probably about 3 months worth of solid work to put a proposal in. And then, to have it rejected. I must be honest, the Tanju Makubela book, the publisher came back and said, oh, we want you to write a sample chapter. And I'd by then already published 1 or 2 books through them. And I thought, like, what chapter do I write? The first chapter, the last chapter, the middle chapter? So I said, it's fine, just let it go. It wasn't supposed to be. The Arm Steel book was canned because they were reopening the Arm Steel. And actually, for me, it was personally, I wasn't enjoying it at all.
Okay.
It was difficult. It was hard. And I thought, you know what? This is the universe. The man above is saying to me, this is not for you. So I've always looked at it that way. It's been, if it's meant to be, it'll happen. If it's not meant to be, and as I said earlier on, I believe in giving it your all. If you've given it your all and it doesn't work, then it's not meant to be. But it's not because you've actually, you've only done half a job or sort of, baked half a cake. You've put everything in. So if it hasn't worked, that's fine. There's something else around the corner that'll come my way. That's how I look at it. Yeah, and it's never a waste. That time is never a waste. You always learn. I mean, what I know about the Arm Steel, I mean, I still don't know much, but I learned a bit. So you learn. You do.
Yes. Sylvia, I feel like I could chat with you all day. And I notice we are nearing the end of our time. If anybody would like to connect with you online or anywhere, how would they do that?
They can go to my website, Melanie, which is www.sylviawalker.co.za. So it's quite simple. And it's Sylvia. I'm also on Instagram, but I must say there's a Sylvia Walker who's much younger than me. And she's a lady that's a TV presenter in Germany. So if you go onto Instagram and you look for Sylvia Walker, you might find her. But her stuff's in German, so you'll know it's not me. I'm the English one. So I'm on Instagram, and then I've also got a Facebook page, which is Sylvia Walker, speaker, author, financial planner. So that's about it. And then my email is sylvia@sylviawalker.co.za. It's quite easy. And my phone number is actually on my website, so I won't bother to give that now, but it is there. So quite active. And I'm active on LinkedIn as well, so if anybody wants to connect with me on LinkedIn, it'll also be quite great to do that. Yeah.
Okay. That's awesome. Thank you so much for sharing your time and your wisdom with us today. I appreciate it so much.
Fantastic. Thanks so much for having me. I've really enjoyed it.
Awesome.